Welcome everyone. So as you're aware, we have the PCA or the Professional Cloud Architect, which is one of the Google Cloud certifications. So Stefan and I will be your speakers or moderators or hosts, whatever you want to call. We'll be everything basically today. So we promised that we would clear up hopefully everything. However, if you have any questions in terms of for the certification or the study guide that we will go through, feel free to ask them lastly, like at the end in the chat. Otherwise, for anyone that would like at the end to ask like and unmute yourself, you can also raise your hand. There will be a button over there for you to raise your hand. Before we start, just to let you know, this is the 6 weeks one, which means that every week on Tuesday up until the March 3rd, I believe, there will be the we will be here for there will be like a couple of hours in the evening, so we'll be able to support you when it comes to that. Probably everyone has questions. What about any exam vouchers or any for training or anything like that? We have prepared for anything that will be beneficial for this one. So hopefully by the end of this session, everything will be clear. Otherwise, if not, as mentioned, so before everything, I will pass it on to Stefan so he can kick it off today.
Amazing. Should we introduce ourselves or can I just jump in?
Feel free. Yeah, that sounds good as well.
So those ones, I actually see some very familiar names from last year. I'm sure Goran can confirm. But for those of you that haven't attended the last year's session, which was for Associate Cloud Engineer certification, my name is Stefan. I'm a software engineer. I work for 01 Founders, and I've been with GDG for quite a while and supporting with pretty much everything with the community for the community. Goran, you want to say a couple of things about you?
Can do. Yeah, can do. Hi everyone, my name is Goran. I've seen a very familiar faces, probably seen you in person as well around London. So I am one of the co-organizers at GDG London, and I also work as a regional technical strategist at Okta. I have obtained the Professional Cloud Architect a couple of years ago, and funnily enough, this year in June, I just checked this week. This year in June, I need to recertify. So this is actually very nice. I would say reminder of the content and everything for myself as well. So nice to meet you, everyone. And Stefan, I'll let you kick it off.
Amazing. Cool. So thank you for everyone that has actually joined us. To be a bit more specific about the professional cloud architect journey, it's a bit different. This focuses a bit more about what should you do in what specific situation. I think my slides have, oh, there they are. Yeah, so what should you do specifically in what situation? And this could be about security, this could be about cost, and so on. We're gonna dive a bit more deeper as we go along. So just moving forward for, I think it's for week one topics. In this course, you'll learn more about the skills covered on the Professional Cloud Architect certification exam. So each week we shall do a high-level overview of each of the modules of the exam, as stated in the exam guide. We shall not focus on those a lot, but you should definitely go through each one of those modules carefully. We will share some links, some materials that can help you. Additionally, you can definitely find on Google platform the guideline for this. Bear in mind that those ones do change regularly. especially if you, for example, do a lab. There might be a difference between the requirements of the lab with the knowledge that you get to, but we'll get into that at the right time. So just to move forward and understand a bit the scope of the exam, based on the Professional Cloud Architect exam guide, as you can see on the screen, I think I've mentioned some of them, but I'm just going to go through them again. So the exam will test scalable and secure solutions on Google Cloud, managing and operating Google Cloud infrastructure, super important, understanding and managing data in Google Cloud, designing and deploying high available applications on Google Cloud, and managing and automating Google Cloud services using APIs and other tools. I want to mention here specifically is that what you'll surely notice in this exam will focus on enterprise level solutions with highly available auto-scaling architectures. And questions will require you not only to choose technically correct answers, but as I've mentioned a few minutes before, but those that will be optimal from cost, security, resilience, and availability perspective. Going forward with this, this is roughly the exam structure. So it's recommended between 80 hours to 150 hours. Obviously, this depends a lot on your level of or capacity of absorbing information. From personal experience, I would definitely recommend to be consistent. Don't try to cram as many hours as possible in a day, because after a while, essentially the information won't get in, like, for sure. And in this situation, in many situations, less is more. So my recommendation would be allocate yourself some time, quiet, or whatever makes you comfortable and you feel that you can absorb as much information as possible. In terms of the exam structure, 50 to 60 questions, 2 hours allocated for the exam. You will have, yes, multiple choice theoretical question, but asking about real world challenges. Do pay attention, because sometimes when you're being given multiple options to choose, you will definitely have 3 answers, 2 answers, or maybe all 4 of them. Sometimes I've seen questions with 5. So yeah, 25% of the questions will be based on case studies, because you do need to be specific on a case-to-case. You don't leave any questions unanswered. Yeah, this can be either taken online from your home or whichever environment makes you comfortable, or you can do you can go to a testing center. I think the one that you have to do it from home, you will have some specific requirements, making sure that nothing interferes with your exam. This is valid for 2 years, and if you do fail, touch wood, you have the first take would be 14 days and so on, 60 days and 1 year. Yeah, so just going forward with this, I just wanted to explain as much as possible here, just so you can have an idea. Moving forward for this, we're going to show you how an exam looks like, exam question looks like. So this would be an example. you work for an international company and manage many GCE instances using SSH and RDP protocols. For security reasons, management asks you that VMs can no longer have external IPs. How can you fulfill this request while still being able to manage those VMs? So this would be you have one question like this would be a very good example to see whether using Bastion host, NAT services, YAP and TCP for forwarding, or use security command center. Actually, for this question, I'll let you write it down, and maybe we can go forward. Oh, thanks for providing the answer for everyone. Okay, let's see. Yeah, so moving forward onto this one, some exam questions, around 12 of them, will be based on so-called case studies. These are, as we said, around 25%. Those are documents describing business scenarios of fake companies, which are designed to test your understanding of the GCP platform, Google Cloud Platform, as well as the ability to apply that knowledge to complex real-world scenarios. So this will mostly focus on meeting some specific business and technical requirements when deploying applications to GCP or planning migrations of existing applications to GCP. All done using best practices with security, availability, resilience, and others in mind. I think the cost here, very important. Those are 4 case studies in total. All those linked on the slides, and you will not get any of these case studies on the exam, which means that you should get a solid understanding of all of these 4, and you should be good form of practice the exam perspective. So starting from our third meeting, we will briefly cover each of these case studies and elaborate on some potential solutions for them, so that you feel more confident on the exam day. Just moving forward with this, we do have a case study for the sample question. Let's go through it actually. So for this question refer to the Mount Kirk Games case study. We will have I think we can share some materials at the end. So Mount Kirk Games, it's building a new multiplayer game that they expect to be very popular. The company wants to collect and analyze game activity logs to gain insights into various metrics. What should you do? Create a pipeline using Cloud PubSub to ingest game activity logs, then use Dataflow for processing and load them into BigQuery for analysis. Use Cloud Monitoring to create a dashboard of key metrics from the game, such as latency and player count. Option B, create a pipeline using Cloud PubSub to ingest game activity logs, then use Dataproc for processing and load them into Cloud SQL for analysis. Use Cloud Monitoring to create a dashboard of key metrics from the game, such as latency and player count. Option C, write game activity logs to cloud storage, then use Dataproc to process them and store the results in Cloud SQL. Use Cloud Logging to create a dashboard of key metrics from the game, such as latency and player count. Or option D, write game activity logs to cloud storage, then use Dataflow for processing and load them into Bigtable for analysis. And use Cloud Logging to create a dashboard of key metrics from the game, such as latency and player count. So this is a very good question and a very good case study. What I look at when I see these kind of questions, I look at key answers all the time, because those are quite no key answers, keywords. So we do have here a situation when the game expects to be very popular, but we need to collect and analyze game activity logs to gain insights into various metrics. So what do we think this should be the answer to? Ian, as usual, well done. First one. I know you're I actually seen that you've passed your certification very recently. Was it this month, I think? Good. Yeah, so that's option A. Good. Cool. So just to move forward onto the next slide. So on this, I always say that if you do fail, once you retake, whether it's an exam, whether it's a project, whatever you do, I always say that you'll definitely not gonna forget that aspect. So here, yeah, you will see the report that you're going to receive for the exam result. So this is very important, because essentially, let's just say for this particular situation, I'm not going to go through all the text, but I think that table is very important, because, for example, let's just say that you have taken the exam, you got your results, and you're good for configuring access within a cloud solution environment. So maybe just read once or twice through it again, and then focus on those aspects that you have failed on. So let's just say you took the exam and configuring a parameter and boundary security is not your strongest skill. Just go again over that knowledge. By the way, I don't think I've mentioned this, but sorry, you will receive access to Cloud Skill platform, where you have a bunch of labs over there, and that's going to be for 3 months. Go again and go over the knowledge that's been covered where you have failed, for example, and practice as much as possible. Once you do that, at least you will know, I need to focus on, for this situation, let's say section 2, section 3, and section 4. And what I like to do for exams specifically, it's go through the knowledge that's being required, something which you will be tested from, essentially the curriculum. And once you feel ready, just book the exam. This is essentially what I do. Maybe for some other people would actually be a bit more comfortable, let's just say, when they set up the exam on 1st of March and they know they have until the 1st of March to study and be at least 85% with all the knowledge. But for me, it works different. I hope you get some inspiration and do whatever it works for you. So just going next to the next slide. Yeah, so this is a big one, and it's important. So before we move forward, let's just provide a couple of tips you might find useful during the learning process. First of all, it's good to have some kind of exam brand up to go through just before the exam itself. You might find such brand ups online, but you can also create one for yourself, and it independently or as a group. It would be very useful to have it when you need to redo the exam after 2 years, because you're going back to your notes. So in this situation, it's important just to, how should I say, centralize everything, because you will go through documents on the cloud skills. You will go through labs. You will go through verification questions. All of these three resources, labs, text, questions, and there are videos as well. So if you do go through these ones, just have a notebook, have some pen and paper, and write it down. Centralize them. I personally do have done this, and it has actually helped me a lot. But obviously, everyone it's different, and they do learn different. So we do have pro tip number 2. Be curious. In this example that we have here, we're setting up a region. I love US Central 1 Iowa, because this is a free region actually that you can use. So for example, when you set up your region, it's something that we've have actually mentioned before, that depends on the region, you will have specific costs. But usually this US Central 1 Iowa, you will not be charged for whatever you're doing there. So make sure you play with all the buttons. You cannot break something. You're in the labs. You do have a student account. Play with them as much as possible. So this is this particular situation. It's a creation of a managed instance group, layer 7 load balancer, or anything more complex. So another tip would be just play as much as possible. Break it, do it again. Obviously, when you're going to go to the lab, you need to follow detailed instruction in order to get the points for each lab. So when you complete a lab, it has a total of, in the top right corner, it has a total of 100 points, and it will be divided into sections. Some of them will be 20 points, 20 points, 20 points. Some of them will be 50-50, and so on. So you need to follow the specific order that you have it in the requirements, so you can finish that lab. From personal experience, yes, I think I have typed a 0 instead of O in the, I know it sounds silly, in the console, and I actually went through the lab step by step. I think I've done that lab 3 times, but I actually haven't missed on that section anything. I know it from the back of my head. So yeah, we do encourage you to go through it and do pay attention as much as possible. Just to move forward, use the GCP free trial with $300. So this will give you, yes, it will give you for 90 days $300. It's great. Just sign up. Obviously, you will have to use your own card, and make sure you do pay attention to this. $300, it's quite a lot on the cloud. I don't think you will lose it, all of it, but it's good. In this, just to give you a bit of more freedom of interacting with GCP. So when these ones can be used when you go through the labs. So for example, I know this in pounds, I don't know in dollars, but if a lab, it's, let's say, five credits, that's the equivalent of £5, I think, or $5. I can't remember exactly, but it would be translated into that. Yeah, so just use those $300. So moving forward with this, and finally, yeah, it's always good to see what others think about the exam itself and how they prepared and what materials they used and found particularly useful. So for that, just follow the link you see on the slide, and have a look at these blogs or articles linked. They can be quite interesting. So feel free in your own free time to go through it. I think that's pretty much done on my side. Am I missing something?
No, I think that's about it. I just want to address the question about the labs in the chat. So when you will go through the Google Skills Labs, previously known as Cloud Skills Boost, previously known as Quick Labs. So like there's like a big keeps being like a renaming every other year or whatever. So make sure you stay on what the lab asks you, because if you go around and start to create different resources, you will get suspended. So then you will need to contact Google Skills support in order for your account to get unsuspended. But sometimes they will not if you would do, because you're seeing differently. So make sure you always stay on that. However, the previous one that it was mentioned about the free trial, that will be for your Google Cloud Console free trial. So you can do a lot of things over there, whatever you want. But please make sure whatever you enable, you also remove, because you will get billed for that. So if you want to play with Vertex AI, ensure that you play, Minala, because it can ramp up very fast on the Vertex AI and those kind of things. However, anything else, let's put it this way, you want to play with Cloud Run, there's a lot of free tier. So on top of the free tier, which is quite generous, you will also get this free trial that you will be able to use them as well. Now, on the Google Skills, right? So mentioned like a little bit of demo on the slide over here. So as you're aware, you should receive an access, right, for this one. If you have not received anything, we have a little bit of a guide over here. So a couple of things is that you should create one. To create, all you need to do is just go to skills.google. If you go to skills.google and sign in with Google, or just use anything when it comes to that site, you will be able to, grant access. Once you have access over there, obviously you need to confirm your email. Then you will receive an email after everything is done, where you will be informed that you are in Google Developer Group Programs Share Group. What does this mean is that you will have a 3 months access in order to complete the access to the professional cloud architect journey over there. So even though it would say, like, for example, this many credits or anything like that, it should be free for you. If you don't have access to it and you already created, but you have not received an email, I'm just going to paste something in the chat. So this is the email subject that you should see. And secondly, if you already have an account, but you have not received that, if you have signed up for this one around 24 or 48 hours, give it a couple of days as well. If you have signed up last week, you already have a Google Skills account, and you have not received, please do let us know by emailing us. Then we'll be able to reach out and check further on this one. Right. So that is the details around Google Skills. I will not go into details because on like opening it, but it's quite straightforward. The only thing is that once you log in over there, you can start. Once you start the journey from the Google Skills dashboard, it will just grant you through it step by step. So it is a combination of a reading video and, as Stefan mentioned, labs as well. Labs are quite useful because you get to have like a hands-on without you worrying at all about whether or not you will pay. However, please sure that don't steer away, right, when it comes to the labs and stuff. So that's the one wanted to mention on that side. Now, let's start with a technical part, right? Just because this is our first week and we have it's literally kind of like, let's put it this way, a module 0, right? So we have a couple of details that we can go through. Now, OPEX versus CAPEX. So the couple of things as well when you're going through the professional cloud architect is that for the ones, for example, taking the associate cloud engineer or anything like that, is that here you are expected to go through a couple of use cases, but also when you read the questions, right, you would need to think as an architect. So what does it mean is that you are aware about the product. So you're aware about, let's say, like a PubSub. PubSub is actually one of my favorite products. I keep bringing it up. So when you think about PubSub or you think about Cloud Run or anything like that, you're aware about the technical details behind it and how can it be deployed and stuff. However, over here, you don't answer as an engineer. You answer as an architect. So this is a huge difference to think about when you're looking at the questions on the exam. So one thing that when you are like working on this as an architect, right? If you haven't been like let's say like a project manager or a program manager, usually with a project manager you have two things as well, right? Which is OPEX and a CAPEX. OPEX is operational expenditure and CAPEX is, well, capital expenditure, right? So what does it mean? Is this one is that when you deploy your project, how much of a CAPEX or a capital expenditure you will need to have in order to start with that. So when you have a client, for example, and for that client, you would, they're thinking, let's put it this way, they're thinking like, oh, we are not sure whether or not we should go on cloud or whether we should go on prem. And many of them, believe me, they're unsure whether or not it will be a hybrid mode. So what does it mean is that when it comes to CAPEX will be very, very little when you want to go on cloud because you already have all the infrastructure over there, right? And you just need to have the platform as a service, which if we are to compare on-prem with cloud, on-prem will have a much more CAPEX, but then OPEX will probably be, you know what I mean, like will be low in terms of if you want to mean just not like an operational expenditure for your like equipment, but operational expenditure for, you know, the electricity, the this and that, and whether or not that you would have like the room, everything that needs to be there with like let's put like a server room on that side. So those is like the two different things, right? So even though that, like I said over there, right, that OPEX is the cloud native, there is also a way that you can kind of like optimize workloads by committing to long term. So when you have when we speak, let's say like, you know, with Google Cloud Sales and you want to deploy a lot more resources, if you commit to a longer term, like 3 years, even 5 years, it will be a little less expensive, thinking about the 3 and the 5 years, but a little bit more expensive in the beginning. So yeah, so you should be, since you are, so it's, you won't be able to see the group in Google Skills, just to answer that one. What does it mean is that it's a fair sharing. So yeah, those are the details. I don't understand the question about practice question. If you are thinking about what I would recommend for CapEx versus OpEx, there is not right answer over here. It all depends on your own. If you want to go on-prem or you want to go hybrid, and you want to have a more CapEx, even going on cloud by long term, then it all depends on your client or even your company and your business, like a model, how much of a CapEx you will have. If you are starting and you just have like a little bit one, so there is not a one glove fits all. It's more of a what is the technical requirements, the business requirements, and the executive statement. So these are the 3 details that you will need to take into consideration when you're thinking about that. So these kind of like cloud computing models, right? We can visualize those one in layers. So think about this. If you move up the layers from one model to another, so each model will require less knowledge, and each model will actually, the most important bit is that each model will require less management of the underlying infrastructure. So this concept is also called abstraction. So in cloud architecture, as the level of abstraction increases, then you know less about the underlying implementation. So what does it mean is that, so let's put it like at these kind of details, like compute engine and cloud storage, for example. They're an example of infrastructure as a service products, right? So you can route virtual machines with compute engine. You can also store like any type of data with cloud storage. But when it comes to Cloud Run and BigQuery, they are an example of a platform as a service, which means that Cloud Run is a fully managed serverless platform where you can develop and host your applications. So the platform, like over there, it takes care of provisioning servers and scaling that app instances based on demand, but you don't have access to it. You don't need to manage. BigQuery, right, for example, on the other side, that one is like the fully managed enterprise data warehouse. So manages, analyzes data, and you can run query for that one. Now, the software as a service, right? We're all aware about that, like the suite of products that make up Google Workspace is a perfect example of Google Cloud Software as a Service. So yeah, so basically these are the 3 layers, let's put it this way, and the abstraction, it goes like up as we move up. A little bit later, we'll compare these models, and we can compare about when it comes to shared responsibility perspective from this one. Now, controlling access, right? So when you're controlling access to Google Clouds, there are 3 key points. Like, for example, we can see it over here. Authentication, it's basically we identify the users, and this is typically done through would the users provide some form of identification. This can be a password, this can be a passkeys, this can be anything like this. So for example, we can use a cloud identity for authentication. Authorization, on the other side, is the set of permission that user is actually kind of like allocated post-authentication. So authentication and authorization are 2 different things. The first one, like when it comes to authentication, is who we are. The authorization is what we can access, right? So for example, the user can be authenticated, which means they confirm their identity, but authentication, just for its own process, it cannot provide nothing when it comes to like on permissions. So for authorization, we will use the Cloud IAM console, Identity and Access Management. And also you can use Cloud Identity for assigning admin roles. Auditing, it's one big thing when it comes to like in the resources. So auditing is a form of kind of like monitoring the resources with which are accessed or modified by like any particular identity. So cloud operation, audit logging, and reports API are one of those ones. If we are thinking about cloud identity as a whole, right? So what's the overview of cloud identity? So cloud identity, it's actually the same identity as a service solution that powers Google Workspace. So it provides a free identity for users. So when you would migrate to cloud identity, you basically create a free account for each of your users, and you can manage all users from the Google Admin Console. The cloud identity, it enables and actually accelerates the use of cloud-centric application models. And when you are onboarding your organization into Google Cloud, setting up cloud identity is a prerequisite to onboard your organization. So upon setting up, let's put it this way, your cloud identity instance, you usually are asked, so I'm talking about like an organization perspective, right? You are asked to add a domain that you own. So this can be for example, the domains, in our case, gdglondon.that, right? So when we are onboarding, we will need to provide the domain. Now, when you provide the domain, you will be asked to validate, because you're entering over there. However, the cloud identity needs to validate that you own that domain. You cannot just enter any domain out there. So those ones are usually done automatically. If you have recently, for example, created, you can also go and do, if you have a domain, you can go and do like a free trial on a Google Workspace, and you get the idea, because that is kind of like the cloud identity onboarding. Usually the validation of the domain ownership, it's done by adding a TXT, records in your DNS records. But most of the time, the Google Workspace, like onboarding, done this quite well, where actually it will do, once you grant them access, it will do the changes. But not all DNS providers are eligible. So for example, Cloudflare, I think it is, GoDaddy it is, like all of those major ones, they are, because the way it does is that it queries your domain and it queries who is your DNS registrar. DNS registrar is, for example, GoDaddy. So what it will do is that, okay, give me an access and then I'll do the changes for you. So you grant them access, they do the changes. Basically, if you don't want to give them access, you can just say no, and they'll provide you for the details for you to add it manually. This is usually a TXT format, TXT record on your root and those kind of details. So once all of this is done, then that Google Cloud organization will be created with the same name as your domain. You might aware about the organization, right? When it comes to that, so when it comes to administration or anything like that, there is two consoles that you need to be. So one is the cloud identity, and the other one is Google Cloud. So access to the cloud identity or your Google Workspace admin, or whatever you want to call it, does not necessarily grant you access to resources in Cloud Console, because they operate on two different things when it comes to that. One over here is that you manage users or anything like that. On the other side, you manage resources. So in Google Admin, you will use to manage those users and groups. And we mentioned, right, the authentication settings methods before and stuff. And in Cloud Console, you will be able to manage roles and authorization for Google Cloud specifically. What does this mean is that over there you will have a set of roles that you will be able to assign, but for more granular approach and to basically provide access to the using least privileged methods, you should go for the fine-grained one. So when we're looking at cloud identity versus identity and access management, so cloud identity is like Google Admin, right? And then on the other side, we have IAM, or Identity and Access Management, in Google Cloud Console. So let's kind of like a look at how you should think about when it comes to like a Google Cloud users, right? So users that come from outside of GCP, let's put it this way, they will be defining cloud identity. So for example, Gmail users, Google Groups, blah, 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 other options, but they will not be the best practice since you can only just manage some privilege, right, and not the accounts themselves. So for example, when you go to cloud identity, you create a group, and then when you go to Google Cloud Console, when you go to identity and access management, on the project level, for example, you can grant a role to that group. Now, when it comes to best practice to grant on those ones, there's a couple of approaches, but it is always a best practice to grant roles to groups instead of individual users. So what does this mean is that you are controlling access on the group. So for example, tomorrow, if anyone does not need to have access to that one, you just remove them from the group, they lose access over there. If you grant them on individual level, that will then become a nightmare to manage, because if you have, let's put it this way, hundreds of services or in GCP, would you go and change that individual assignment to those 100 users? For onboarding and offboarding will be a nightmare. One of the best ones will be role-based access control as well, depending on we have a prerequisites preset on those ones. And yeah, those are like other kind of details should go. So in most cases, the organization would like need to create like users and groups manually. So when we are talking about professional organizations, those professional organizations usually would use Active Directory, for example, or Google Cloud Domain Services in this case, to sync user and provide them access over there. It can be also kind of like an ADFS as well, to replicate from AD to cloud identity. So when it comes to the replication for ADFS, if that is like an option, that one is always one way. So it always will be from AD to cloud identity, but it won't be two-way sync. So when it comes to organization hierarchy, right? Let's actually have like a little bit more in these details. You will know that we are going like on a high level, just because you will see that there would be a little bit like a links, which we'll share at the end. So when it comes to like your workloads, so if we go into this way, right? So if you see the actual image over here, right? We have an example.com, we have folders, we have projects, and we have resources, right? So this is the hierarchy that will be in GCP. A little bit more in that details shortly, but why would you, for example, want to create, let's say like I just want to do a single GCP project and I'm just going to have all your workloads over there. Like, why would I bother to go to different projects and go multiple folders or anything like that? Well, basically because logically, always in a professional environment, it makes sense for you to separate the resources between departments, between teams, products, dev, prod, everything that it comes to that. But on top of that, you also grant permissions via IAM on different levels. So because you want to implement the approach of least privilege, right? Also firewall policies, org policies, all those details, you will be assigning on differently over there. We shall still cover those ones a little bit. So for example, if you're talking about an example of our symbol project, right, when it comes over there, for example, Symbol Bank will create their organization, and it will have like a folders hierarchy, and it's going to be with the departments, it's going to be with the teams, it's going to be product, share services. But this is mainly because they will utilize this for a different projects, and this will be for development, for QA, production. So that way you would always know that, you know, you're in development, you're in that project, or, you know, over there, you're working on resources over there, nothing will affect production. But if it's everything over there, then you'll be like, okay, who's what, or whatever it is. Now, a little bit of an exam tip, because it is a professional cloud architect, right? So you will need to know how to migrate projects across orgs and folders. So that's why the link is over there. What does it mean is that, what about the services running within a project? Are they going to be impacted? Because you're talking about identity and access, or IAM. I'll just go with IAM forward. Identity and access management permissions in one project, one resource, to another project, another folder, another resource, right? When you migrate as well, if you need to migrate between organization, you need to also watch out for org policies. For example, if you need to migrate from organization A to organization B, what's the permissions that you need to have over there? So, for example, your resource is inside a project A, which is in a folder A, which is under the organization. Now, that project to be moved to a different organization, do you have an export access? Do you have then the person that is doing it? Do you have an import access in the other organization? How about the identity and access management? Do you have the resources that they are in? Do you have enough access as well to move them across? So all of these you need to watch out, right? So org policies, external users, internal users, whatever it is, because those can break it on org level. So if you are moving across, it will actually break. Do you have a virtual private cloud on it? Would that service control, you know, you need to go through it. So when it comes to those one and stuff, it's like, you know, very beneficial to look at, like, create you like a migration project when it comes to this. Another thing as well, when you do the migration, right, what is your backout plan, the way we call it, right? So what is the rollback plan? Because you can, for example, migrate a project that is not associated with an organization into an organization, but once that is done, can you change it back to an organization? That's like one thing to think about as well, right? Feel free to answer in the chat if you think like if you can do it or anything like that. What about the VPC service control, right? Can you migrate a project that is protected by that? You know, so what do you think? If you have a VPC service controls and you have a project that is protected by that VPC service control security perimeter, can you migrate that one as well, right? It will fail, but there's like, for example, a workaround. You will need to remove the project from the perimeter, or anything like that. When we are here at VPC, right, shared VPC projects actually can be migrated. So the way it's going to work is that the shared VPC host project must be migrated first, and then all of the other services after that. Right, yeah, so that is like a little bit of more details when it comes. Now, that hierarchy that we talked before, right? So we're talking about organization, folders, project, resources. So this slide over here, right, it's kind of like starts introducing that design criteria. Now, in GCP, this is how inheritance works down the chain. So it is kind of like a good design. A good design allows for simpler operation, but it will kind of like leverage inheritance to reduce the number of individual configuration. But also, if you think about this, policies can be changed all the way down to the individual node level. So if you have on organization level, you have denied something, you go down, you allow on the resources, that is how it's going to be, right, on this part. But if you have something that you allow organization, you deny on the resources, what is going to be? So a little bit of an exam tip over here. Watch out for IAM deny policies. So when you would go through the identity access management documentation, please ensure that you are going or you're looking through or going through and understand how the hierarchy or the inheritance is actually applied to the identity and access management policies, because that policy, right, it can be all the way from the root to the resources as well. So for example, let's have a look at one like an example, right? So over here we have the roles to browse, right, on the organization. So which means that, well, everyone can see the hierarchy, right? So different levels of IAM, right? So the default assumption, like for example, for all of this, is that if you don't have a privileges granted directly or indirectly, you can't do anything. And this is something good, right? Now let's put it this way. If you see like on the IaaS or then infrastructure as a service folder, then we have the viewer roles over there, which means that when you have the viewer roles, they will be able, the group that's over there, they'll be able to view logs and VMs, right? So, but in the other one, we have the browser, which is on the actual, on the root, like everyone in example.org, everyone in an organization will be able to see the hierarchy. Yeah, that's fine, but are you able to see the logs? That's one thing to think about over there, right? Compute.admin is the Google Compute Engine, like over there. So that one is you have only access to the Linux OS group because you want them to manage resources in the compute engine. So they're admin, which means they can do everything over there. They can create, they can destroy VMs, they can do anything when it comes to that one, right? So this is just like as an example right over there. The last one, if you see over here, storage.admin, which means that that group, it has the permissions, like storage.admin, which means the Google Cloud Storage, has the permissions on that project. But let's put it this way. If you are in App1 group and you have as admin storage permissions, if you can see it over there, you have permissions on those 4 projects. But what if I create a 5th project in the dev folder, Apache Dev 3, for example, and I don't grant you access? Will you have access over there? Because if we start over, if you talk about before, right, is that the actual assumption is that if you don't have granted, whether it's kind of like a directly or indirectly will be by a group, for example, you can't do anything. So in the Apache Dev 3, you won't be able to do anything on that storage because, well, you won't even have access to that storage to do anything. So this is kind of like how it is. On the actual organization policy, so if you see over here, so all the VMs, right, it's over here, it says that VM external IP access when it comes to the constraint. So apart from the actual permissions, there is a policies as well that you can apply. So what this means is that if you apply a policy that no VMs should have an external IP, when someone will try to create it, they won't be able to create it. Well, there's not going to be an external IP address assigned for any VM within that organization because you have actually organization policy on that one. If you have a true under the, like over there, DMZ, so DMZ is it's a networking term, right, which stands for demarcation zone, which means that every resources over there, it's isolated from anything else, which means that if you have two VMs in the DMZ, those ones can only communicate, let's put it this way, even if you can even restrict further, but let's assume they can communicate between them in that folder, but they cannot communicate with any other resources, but they can communicate with the internet, right? Because you have assigned an organization policy for those ones, and then they will be able to have an external IP address. A little bit of details around organization policies and IAM policies. So if you can see it over here, there is like a difference between them. IAM explicitly on the authorization part, policies can be on pretty much everything else, right? So for example, you can, if an example over here is that you can limit resources, which is like resource sharing or anything like that. So if you see the actual red sentence over there, is that both should be used as part of a security posture. What does this mean is that there is no one defense for 100%. Let's put it this way: there's no one resource or like a policy or IAM policy for 100% defense. So what does it mean is that when you think about a cloud, you should think about defense in depth. So what does it mean is that even though you are denying access to, let's put it this way, you're denying access to your VMs, that only the admin group as well, then you need to think about as well that, well, how we can further secure these VMs. One thing is that, do they require an internet access or do we not? Because just by giving them all access to internet, it's kind of like, well, do they need to have access to internet? If you have an internal ones resources running over there, well, you won't need it right over there, because what it happens is that you use them just internal, and you don't apply an external IP address because you don't want the internet, because there's no benefit. Those benefits from that VM being exposed to the internet, because being exposed to the internet, then you have a different ports that will be secured. And if someone does a mistake and in your ingress traffic, right, it opens a port, then what is happening over there? Then you suddenly expose, let's put it this way, if it's like a Windows VM and you open a 3389, then you expose RDP to the external world. And you don't want to do that, basically. So both of those ones, it's to be used for that defense in depth, because if you don't need access, you just cut the external IP address. This one, probably it is known as well, but there is a very nice, I think it was like from Priyanka, who did these GCP sketch notes. They're still out there, although Priyanka is no longer with the Google Cloud team, but they're actually quite good because picture paints 1,000 words, right? So you can go through them. We'll be able to share that one as well. That's fun, but yeah, they are quite nice when it goes to that. And you can see over there the cloudgirl.dev is that where they should be. They were still up, but then if they are, yeah, nice. Yes, I agree. Yeah, it's quite great when it comes to explaining on resources, and it's fun as well, right? It makes you remember when it comes to those ones. So if you see over here, right, she talks about, well, authentication, authorization. Well, what's authentication? But what is Google authentication? What you can use? But you can use third party as well for authentication, and so on and so on. So when it comes to resources, right, there are GCP resources. They are organized both physically and logically. So even though we talk about the cloud, right, we all know that there is a physical organization somewhere where that, what I mean, every resource, well, there's a physical organization for like every resource, and we should be aware where that one resides, right? So when it comes to GCP, those will be the data centers, right? I think as far as I remember, all of them, well, their location is known, but their exact location is not known, right? So what does this mean is that, for example, Europe West 2, we know it's London, but where is the exact location? So like previously Stefan mentioned, US Central 1 is in Iowa, but where is the exact location and stuff? So this is because, well, they're basically kind of like they're not known, right? Or they're like hidden, let's put it this way, because of mainly physical security. But you know, even if they are known, there is a couple of, I'll remember that there was where the cloud lives, I believe it was, I think it was online, a series as well from Stephanie Wong, where she did attend one of the data centers, and she talked over there about the layers. So I believe there was 5 or 6 layers of physical security you needed to pass in order to get access to it. So this can be, you know, first when you have like the walls with a gate, then second you have the security guards, third you have your key card, fourth you have your biometrics, fifth you have, you know, something else and something else. So yeah, this is like the way it is. Now, if you go back to the resources, right? So some of the resources, right, they can be, well, we should be aware of their reside, right? So some of them can be zonal. So for example, the compute engine instances, persistent disk, they are zonal, but some of them they can be regional, right? Now, so, but some of them they can be, let's put it this way, a little bit tricky, a little bit confusing, because now we mentioned that persistent disk, right? It can be zonal, but also there are also regional versions as well. So they can be both zonal, they can be both regional as well. What is the big difference? Well, the big difference is mostly pricing, because they would be more expensive if you have them on a region, just because you want to have like a failover or anything like that. But also they might have any different constraint as well. So the gist kind of like on this logical organization is that each GCP resource, no matter where it resides, right, it must belong to a project. You can't create a resource. So resource over here will be a Cloud SQL instance, right? So Cloud SQL instance cannot be created if it's not part of a project. That's rule number one. The zones and the regions, they will physically organize the resources that we use. So we talked about zones, which zone it is, in which region, right? So US Central 1 can be US Central 1A, 1B, whatever, 1C, right? Let's put it that way. So zones into a region. So those are the physical organization. But the logical organization will be the project that we talk about, that research. For example, we talked about the Cloud SQL instance. Now, when it comes to projects, right, it can be easily, you can create, you can manage, delete. And also when you delete, one thing to note is that you can recover them from the accidental deletion. Now, one of the exam tips over here is that you can move projects between folders, and also you can migrate them to other organizations. So those things to remember as well, right? When you would go to the IAM console, you can manage resources from there. So when you click on manage resources, you will basically be shown all the resources that you have access to, and these can be resources in a different organization. So why would you move, let's put it like a resources to different organization? Well, in the professional world, right, there is there's going to be a company, or well, let's put it this way. Currently today, in the professional world, there is always going to be any acquisitions or any mergers going on. So if you have an acquisition of a company, so you use a GCP, they use a GCP, right? So when you do an acquisition, you normally want to migrate resources to your side so that it will be managed by one team. So yeah, so that will be like, so if you are asked during the exam about any acquisitions, mergers, or anything like that, remember that projects can be moved between folders, but also they can be migrated between organizations. So the GCP resources, right, when it comes to, so global, regional, zonal. So why matters? It mainly would be depending on the what the resources will be. So for example, external load balancing, it can be global, it can be regional, right? Global, it is, for example, if you see it, a HTTPS or a SSL proxy. Regional can be a network one when it comes to load balancing and stuff. There is a differences when it comes to that. There is a link over there that you'll be able to utilize. But the main thing over here to think about is that if you want to achieve high availability, can you achieve high availability in a zonal, for example, or does it need to be regional? Can you achieve high availability in regional? Does it need to be multi-regional? When you deploy an application of Cloud Run, do you want it to be, do you want to be served traffic globally? How do you want to be served traffic? Do you want to be globally? When you want to serve traffic globally from each kind of like from each region, do you want to have that one to live? Do you want to have in each region around the world instance of your application, then a global load balancer, so that way the actual access to the resources will be quite low. Well, not like the time to access those resources will be quite low for the end user, and so forth and so forth. So those are a little bit kind of like this. If you see it over here, usually in San Francisco, it gets to like our load balancing, and then from there it gets routed to a different one. If it is in Singapore, then it gets routed to a different one. So apart from external, that can be also internal load balancing. But in order for me not to waste a lot of time, I will let you have fun with it, because it's quite fun knowing all of those ones, but also can be quite confusing. So going back to the previous one, make sure you take notes when it comes to that. Right. A couple of more details as well. So there is an optional study materials as well for you. These are from around the web, let's put it this way. So it can be a lot of best practices, etc., etc. Some of them can be links to videos, to podcasts, or anything like that. So yeah, there is not like we mentioned, right? It's basically, well, there is more. So we've got over here what a podcast and DeFi. But the main thing behind it, when it comes to this one, right, is that make sure to enjoy the journey as much as you can. We have added a little bit at the beginning of how you should approach. Stefan, for example, mentions of how you should approach when it comes to this one. Now, I will give a couple of details of how I am approaching. So I'm currently going through study material for a different exam. Now, the way I would approach is that I would schedule a couple of hours during the day. So, for example, I have the flexibility that at the end of the work hour every day, have flexibility. So I would have a couple of hours dedicated for me to go through that. But the main thing behind is that stick with the schedule. So what does it mean is that be a little bit, strict with yourself, but not too much. Meaning, enjoy the journey, but also keep with your schedule. So the way I would approach is that I would add for the next 3-4 weeks, for example, 2 hours a day, and that's it. Most importantly, I don't touch that during the weekend. The weekend is time for me to, I don't know, if I have a side project, maybe check around that. But most importantly, weekend is for us to disconnect as well. So the way I would do is that I have 5 days. I have to do 2 hours. So if I did 10 hours this week, I'm good. If I did 9 hours, that means that I would need to eat an hour from my weekend time. And you can do it this week, you can do the next one. Do I want to do every week? So when I mean like be a little bit strict would be like, okay, so today I don't feel like it in the evening, to study for that. So what I will do is that, well, basically I will skip on that and get the 2 hours in the weekend. But when you get the 2 hours in the weekend, then you're like, okay, for the next week, I will not eat in my weekend time. So, but I will stick with this, right? So after let's say like I put it like a 2-3 weeks past, even a month past, I will be like, okay, so based on this time, I have actually went through this much of a material. Now I have this much, which is like, let's put it this way, another 50%, roughly speaking, right? When you would go through the Google Skills, you will have how much less of the material you have. So I would be over there like, okay, another 50% for me to go through, which means that at this date, in a month time, let's put it this way, 27th of February, I will schedule from now the exam and I will work too. So that is kind of like usually how I approach, but there is another one as well that I would do. I would not schedule my exam. What I would do is I would go through that and I would go up until the time and then I would be like, okay, you know what? I'm ready. I read everything. I know everything. I did a little bit of reading this morning. I'm ready. So what I'll do is I will go and schedule the exam in half an hour and just pretty much get ready my desk and get ready for the exam. So that's like a couple. But one thing to note is that do whatever suits you best. Every one of us, right, can work differently. So every one of us is basically, when it comes to that. There's the Google Cloud Innovators Program as well. There's a link over there. There is also a QR code. You can sign up. So what you would do from that one is you will get a 35 monthly credits, and you can use courses, hands-on labs, or everything like this. This is obviously for the Google Skills after this one. Another one as well is the Arcade. If you want to complete a lot of labs and also compete, but also get prizes, this is the one that you can go through it. So you can sign up over there, and then you can go through this one. So yeah, they are available. Games are available over there. They're posted. I think they're like monthly or something like that. I'm not quite sure, but yeah, basically have fun over there. So those are the details when it comes to this one. Before we separate, or leave it for the questions or additional details from us to provide, it's that another thing that we would do is that we would share this workbook. So what does this workbook do is that you will have, for example, for a simple direct case study, you will have a couple of details. Remember before we mentioned that there is a technical requirement, there's a business requirement, but there is also an executive statement. So you will need to understand all of them, right? So first things first, you have the company overview, you have what is their existing technical environment. So you'll need to understand that. But before you are able to answer questions about the use case study, you need to understand what is their business requirements, their technical requirements, and the executive statement. Why this is important is that when you would migrate, or when you architect some migration to Google Cloud, for example, you need to think about that there can be a multiple solutions when it comes to that. Let's put it this way. You have a VM on-prem, right? VM on-prem, and you want to migrate to Google Cloud. What is the best cost-effective solution for you to migrate? Like, let's put it like this way, if someone wants to answer in the chat. Stefan, if you want, feel free to come on camera as well, if you're around. That one. So think about this. You have a VM on-prem. What would be the best cost-effective solution that would require the least amount of effort for you to migrate to Google Cloud, for example, for that VM on-prem? Well, the best one will be a lift and shift, right? So Google Compute Engine, you have the VM over there. So what will be the basically require the least effort and basically, you know what I mean? Kind of like not most cost effective in long term, but most cost effective right now, right? So you do the lift and shift because that is the least effort. So that's why it's very important to understand the business, technical, and executive statement. Because when you would have questions, so let's put it this way. Before we go to the questions, over here you will have kind of like a little bit of a potential solutions, right? So you can feel free to that. So we will not go through all the questions over here, but we will share and you will be able to answer them at your own pace at home. So what does that mean is that you will answer, you will know the answer, and then we will come back the next time. We will go through them together at the beginning of the next class, let's put it that way. So when you would go through questions or anything like that, think about how would you approach the question. Think about what you should look out for. Because if you see it over here, A has cloud storage bucket, B cloud storage bucket, C cloud storage bucket, D has BigQuery, right? So the ABC, for example, right? We're not going to answer, but the ABC, they all have cloud storage bucket. So they must have some difference over there, right? I mean, let's put it this way. The first one has a data prep, but then second, B and C, they both have IoT Core PubSub data flow. But there's a difference between nearline and standard, So it's kind of like a think about how would you go and how would you, well, it's kind of like the note is a keyword, right? How would you find keywords over here? That's the most important thing when you would go through that one. Because if you remember at the beginning, the pro tip was like, well, you don't have a lot of time to spend. It's like a minute and a half per question. And some of them can be quite long. I'm not sure in any of these ones we have long ones. But for example, yeah, this one it's relatively long, right? This one relatively long, but this one is not. So yeah, those are the details. Over here, you will see a little bit of our resources as well. So you feel free to go through that. But most important, those are the details. Now, last thing, the maintenance part, right? You have access to Google Skills for 3 months. You should, actually, let's put it this, you should have access to that for 3 months. If you don't, but you have signed up recently, like within the last couple of days, give it a couple of days as well, and you should receive an email where it's going to welcome you to a credit sharing group. So that's number one. Number two, this is a 6 weeks one. If you go to our page, which I will now get the link. If you go to our page, you will be able to find all the 6 weeks one. You can sign up now, or you can sign up, down the road. We will be able to share resources for everyone that attended this one, but we won't be able to share resources for people that have signed up. So that's like another thing to note. The slides from today, they will be shared, and a recording will be shared as well. The recording, we will wait a little to process, and then once it's processed, we'll upload it, edit it, upload it, and then we will share the resources. Unfortunately, as Stefan mentions, we don't have. Well, I don't know if you did you mention, Stefan, about that we don't have the budget?
The budget for free vouchers for exam.
Yes.
Yeah. So someone has actually asked this question in the chat, and I've actually explained it. I'm just, if that's okay, I'm just gonna go through it again. So we can offer 50% discount for the exam. Those are limited. The period of time of how long they will be valid for, I'm not 100% sure, because we do have to check this. But considering the fact that we do have a limited amount, we're just gonna do a random pick. And yes, this would be contingent to everyone attending every session of those 6 weeks. And we'll be doing this at the end of the 6-week session. I hope I've answered everyone's question, and it's quite clear.
Yes, correct. So so to answer also Sumit's question, yep, it's basically need to sign up for every session. Unfortunately, signing up to one of the sessions, it does not sign you up to all of them. So it needs to be like, but if you would, go over there and find, you will see the one for next week and so forth and so forth. So all of them are named the same: Certification Study Group Professional Cloud Architect. Yeah, so attendance is automatic. So attendance is registered when you join, right? So when you join and you're here, then the attendance is registered. Am I still audible? Because I think I lost you, Stefan. Oh, no, you're here. Okay, cool. Yeah. I think it's like probably someone might.
I put myself on mute.
No, yeah, that's fine. Cool. Okay, I'm still audible. Okay, awesome. Yeah, so that is the one. So Stefan mentioned as well the vouchers. We would communicate their expiration date when we would share them out, but they will be at the end at random, and basically, for the one that's sticking with us during this 6 weeks journey, there will be a little bit of a reward and stuff. One thing to note as well is, I'm unsure if anyone would be interested as well. We were also thinking that whether or not we should do a little bit of a hybrid, maybe the last session. So what this means is that I understand this through my company account, can I transfer? No, you can't transfer that one. But if you sign up with your personal account to our page, to register, then you will get access to Google Skills, and then you can start it from there. But unfortunately, it's not transferable. But you can always start at one if you want, and then you just continue on the other one. But progress will be saved with each account and not transferable. So yeah, if anyone is interested and stuff, maybe what we can do is we can share out a little bit of a poll as well and stuff. But if we can discuss this further. But we were thinking as well a little bit of a hybrid when it comes to that. Now, I think so. We did promise something big at the beginning, that we would answer everything hopefully during the session, and there's going to be no questions in the end. Let's see. Cost of exam. Oh, $200, is it?
I think so. I'm not 100% sure.
I think it's 200 to 250. 200 USD plus tax.
Yes.
Plus tax because it's an American answer. I don't know if, but 200, yeah, 200 USD. Yeah, if I trust Gemini on my Google.
Ian, I love Ian. He calculated the tax as well.
Nice.
He won't be having any issues with setting up his budget on GCP. I can see that from miles away.
Cool. So yeah, awesome, nice, perfect. Oh, I love that we can help each other. Perfect. On Google Book, nice. So anyone that that uses it, I still use it. So all right, I'm gonna stop sharing. I'm just thinking something. Did we forget anything? I think not. Well, we did forget something. Just to say to everyone, welcome to the journey, and I hope you're gonna love it. And for anyone that we haven't connected, and if you want to share online and everything, you can tag us, but also you can add at GDG London, right? So let me just get something from that and share you that one. But if you want to share with us any progress of your journey or anything that you want to, well, one thing is like over here is that if you want to brag that you actually passed it, which, you know, feel free to tag us as well. So that's the one. So Google Developers London, that's our LinkedIn as well. Feel free to connect with us. For any questions, feel free to shoot an email as well. We do read the emails. We try to stay on top. But one thing to note as well is that we do have our day jobs. So sometimes we might be a little bit of delay, but we aim to respond quite fast. As you might aware, we are volunteers. So yeah. Yeah, those are like our two, GDG London and the email. Any other questions that we might have, or are we boring you right now with?
I hope they're not tired of us. we will be for 6 weeks together.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks. Perfect. Yeah. All right, folks. Well, hope you have a great evening, great afternoon, great morning if you're from the US. If you're from Australia, you know, well, if you're in Melbourne, it's like 6 a.m. So that's like gonna be very big dedication. So perfect. Thanks everyone, and awesome. See you next week.
See you next week. Bye.